Ladies and gentlemen, dreamers, builders, and visionaries, you were never called to blend in. You were born to stand out. The ideas you carry were not meant to be echoes of someone else's voice. They were crafted in the deep, quiet places of your soul. But isn't it strange? When you first started, they ignored you, they questioned your direction, dismissed your vision, and told you to be realistic. You stood alone in the room trying to explain what only you could see. But you kept building, you kept writing, you kept designing, planning, and pushing because something inside you refused to give up. And then, one day, something shifted. The same people who rolled their eyes began mimicking your words. The ones who doubted your direction started walking your path. Why? Because originality speaks louder than imitation, and authenticity is magnetic. You see, rejection is often a response to what people don't understand. And fear of the unfamiliar causes others to overlook what's truly valuable. But when the fruit starts to show, when results begin to speak louder than opinions, they come back around, not to give you credit, but to borrow your courage. They ignored you when you were raw, but now they're copying what you refined. That's the power of staying original. Being original is costly. It often means isolation, misunderstanding, and seasons of invisibility. But it also means you're not a copy, you're a prototype. And prototypes set standards, not follow them. When others are chasing trends, you're creating them. When they're repeating, you're revealing. That's the weight of originality. It breaks molds and rewrites expectations. Originality is the language of visionaries, but it often arrives uncelebrated. When a person brings forth something new, an idea, a design, a sound, a business model, it doesn't always meet applause. In fact, it is often ignored or dismissed. This isn't because the idea lacks value, it's because it disrupts what people have grown comfortable with. Humanity naturally leans toward what is familiar, what feels predictable, and what has already been tested. Originality, however, asks us to look again, think differently, and consider a reality outside our current framework. That alone makes many uncomfortable. People tend to build their lives around patterns and traditions. These patterns become mental furniture. They give a sense of structure, even if outdated or limiting. When someone introduces an original idea, it feels like rearranging that furniture in the dark. People can't immediately see where it fits, so they push back, mock, or ignore. This initial rejection isn't a reflection of the idea's worth. It's a symptom of disruption. Comfort zones are like invisible boundaries. We only recognize how deep they go when someone tries to stretch them. Originality stretches them. Those who dare to be original are often met with isolation, not admiration. Their work is questioned. Their motives are doubted. Their results are underestimated. And yet, these same ideas often become the very foundation that future generations build upon. The early stages of originality are lonely because the fruit isn't visible yet. People measure things by results. But original thinkers operate from vision. They see beyond the now. That vision often requires them to continue without applause, continue without approval, and build without validation. Because if originality waits to be accepted before it acts, it will die in the waiting room. What makes originality powerful is not just the newness of an idea, it's the courage to present something before it's understood. The greatest inventions, movements, and breakthroughs in history all began with someone whose originality was mocked or misunderstood. Over time, as the idea begins to produce undeniable results, people revisit what they once rejected. What was once considered radical becomes revolutionary. What was once too strange becomes the new standard. That is the irony of originality. It must be rejected before it can be embraced. The original thinker doesn't follow the crowd because the crowd is often late to truth. The crowd comes after proof. Originality acts before proof is available. That's why it challenges comfort zones. It doesn't play by the rules that were set by people who never left their own. Instead, it writes new ones. It lives by conviction, not consensus. It trusts that what is planted in faith today will become a forest of influence tomorrow. The discomfort people feel toward originality is not always personal. It's internal. It exposes where they've settled, what they've stopped questioning, and how deeply they feared change. That's why the presence of an original person doesn't just bring new ideas, it often reveals old limitations. The moment you present something new, it quietly confronts everything people have built their security on. That confrontation may not be welcome, but it is necessary. Without it, nothing shifts, nothing grows, nothing breaks out of the ordinary. When your originality is unrecognized, don't retreat. Don't shrink back to the safety of sameness. Understand that the very resistance you face is evidence that you're pushing into new territory. You're shaking the dust off old mindsets. You're creating possibility where people only saw routine. The resistance is not proof of failure. It's proof that your originality is doing its job. And in time, the same world that doubted you will echo what you once had to declare alone. One of the strange truths of life is that many people initially reject what they later admire. When an idea, style, business, or message first arrives and doesn't match their expectations or familiarity, it's easy for people to dismiss it. But the moment that same idea starts to produce results, when it gains traction, brings success, or draws attention, the very ones who once mocked it begin to mimic it. This isn't hypocrisy as much as it is human nature. People are uncomfortable with what they don't understand, and they resist what challenges their established. But once that unfamiliar thing begins to work, it becomes attractive. That shift can be confusing for the originator, but it's also confirmation that you're on the right track. Most of what is now widely accepted and even celebrated was once ridiculed. The music genres that now fill stadiums, the fashion trends that dominate red carpets, the business models that shape industries, they all began as someone's unproven vision. The early days of originality are often met with laughter, silence, or doubt. But history keeps repeating itself. People copy what they once criticized. They adopt what they once ignored. This should not be seen as betrayal, but as validation. It is proof that what was sown in silence has started to speak. This process teaches a valuable lesson. Don't measure the worth of your ideas by the applause they receive in the beginning. True value is not determined by immediate popularity. The most impactful ideas often take time to be seen for what they truly are. If you abandon your vision because of early rejection, you may never see the fruit of your labor. Many people give up too soon, not because their ideas weren't good, but because they allowed someone else's blindness to become their discouragement. The seed is always buried before it blossoms, and in that buried state, it can look forgotten. But that is only part of the process. When you see people begin to imitate what they once dismissed, do not let bitterness grow in your heart. Instead, let it deepen your confidence. Let it remind you that your originality was never the problem. It was simply ahead of its time. Sometimes the world needs time to catch up with the clarity you already had. Your consistency is what turns resistance into respect. People may not acknowledge your value at first, but if you remain true to your purpose, they'll have no choice but to reckon with it. Imitation is often the sincerest form of recognition, especially when it follows rejection. It means what you brought to the table had enough weight to shift someone's thinking. It means the fruit of your faith and effort became undeniable. Rather than retaliate, celebrate. You are not in competition with those who once overlooked you. You are here to lead, not to be liked. The reward is not in applause. It is in alignment. When you stay aligned with your calling, you will eventually outlast every critic and outshine every copy. The danger of discouragement is that it tempts you to conform. It whispers, maybe you should do what everyone else is doing. But the moment you stop being authentic in order to be accepted, you lose the power that made you different in the first place. Your difference is your distinction. Your uniqueness is your advantage. The rejection you face today may become the respect you receive tomorrow, but only if you keep going, only if you trust what was planted in you. So when they laugh, ignore, or dismiss, Don't retreat. Let your results speak, because in time, even the doubters will borrow your blueprint. Remaining authentic in a world that constantly pressures you to conform is one of the greatest acts of courage. It's easy to be true to yourself when everyone is cheering you on, when affirmation is flowing, and when your path seems widely accepted. But the real test of authenticity comes when the crowd is silent, when your efforts go unnoticed, and when your decisions are questioned by those around you. Delayed applause can be deeply discouraging, especially when it feels like everyone else is getting their moment in the spotlight while you're still in the shadows. It takes strength to keep walking in your own truth when there is little evidence that you're being seen, understood, or valued. Criticism often comes louder and faster than praise. The moment you choose to live differently, think differently, or build something unique, you automatically stand out. And anything that stands out is an easy target for criticism. Some people critique what they don't have the courage to pursue. Others criticize what they secretly admire but are too afraid to attempt. When you remain authentic, you confront people with the parts of themselves they have ignored. That discomfort sometimes shows up as opposition, not because you're wrong, but because your presence reveals their compromise. Your authenticity can feel like a threat to the comfort of those who have settled. But that's where courage comes in. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to keep moving in spite of it. To remain authentic in the midst of loud criticism is to believe more in your conviction than in the opinions of the crowd. It is choosing purpose over popularity. It is trusting the long-term reward of integrity over the short-term gain of imitation. The applause might be delayed, but when it comes, it will be genuine. It will not be for a version of you that was edited to please others. It will be for the real you, the one who didn't quit. Authenticity also demands patience. The fruit of staying true to yourself doesn't always show up quickly. There are seasons where it feels like everyone else is advancing faster because they're playing by rules that you refuse to compromise on. But the success built on shortcuts never lasts. When you build your life on authenticity, the foundation may take longer to set, but it will stand when storms come. Time reveals the strength of what is real and the weakness of what is fake. What's built with patience, truth, and conviction will endure longer than what's built with popularity, trends, and performance. Remaining authentic is not about being perfect. It's about being rooted. Rooted, it's the decision to live from your core, not from others' expectations. It means you're not performing for validation. You're living from conviction. That takes deep courage because it often means walking alone, being misunderstood, and carrying your vision without applause. But when applause does come, it won't change you. It will only confirm what you already knew. You are always enough as you are. The challenge was never about becoming someone else. It was about having the faith to stay consistent until the results could speak for themselves.
In every season where your voice shakes, where doubts grow louder than dreams, and where silence makes you question your steps, remember, your authenticity is your assignment. It's not just about being different, it's about being devoted to who you truly are. Don't let criticism distract you or delays shake you. Stay grounded, stay real, and let your journey speak when words can't. The world eventually catches up to those who stay true. Staying original means resisting the pull to constantly seek approval and instead remaining rooted in the vision that was birthed in your heart before anyone applauded, affirmed, or even noticed you. Vision is internal. It comes from purpose, conviction, and a sense of calling. Validation is external. It comes from likes, comments, applause, and opinions. When you live for validation, you become reactive, adjusting your voice, your dream, and your identity based on what people praise or reject. But when you live anchored to vision, you become consistent, focused, and free to build something lasting, even when no one understands it yet.
Vision is not always popular in its early stages. In fact, most original ideas are first misunderstood, then resisted, and only later respected. If you depend on validation to move forward, you'll abandon your originality the moment criticism appeared. You'll begin to trade boldness for safety, depth for attention, and impact for applause. But true visionaries understand that their responsibility is not to be understood, it's to stay faithful. They know that vision takes time to unfold, and often the loneliest part of the journey is when you're walking forward without visible results. That's when the temptation to copy others becomes strongest, because imitation often gets quicker praise than authenticity. To stay original, you have to be more committed to progress than popularity. Originality doesn't always get immediate feedback. Sometimes it brings silence. Other times it brings opposition. But in either case, you must not let external response dictate internal direction. If your identity is tied to applause, then your creativity becomes fragile. But if it's tied to purpose, then your creativity becomes unshakable. You don't create because people clap, you create because you see something that doesn't yet exist and believe it's your responsibility to bring it to life. There is something powerful about a person who stays true to their voice, even when others don't understand the sound of it. That kind of person builds legacy, not trends. Legacies born out of a deep commitment to vision. It takes time, endurance, and resilience. Trends, on the other hand, chase validation and fade as quickly as they rise. If you want to make a lasting impact, you must choose the long road of vision over the fast lane of applause. You must choose to be anchored instead of easily swayed. Remaining original also requires clarity. When you're clear about your purpose, you don't compete, you create, you don't imitate, you innovate. That clarity acts as an anchor when the storms of doubt, research, and delay try to shake your confidence. It reminds you why you started and who you're becoming. Validation may come and go, but vision keeps you grounded. It helps you push forward when you feel unseen and keeps your work sacred even when it's uncelebrated. The truth is, applause can be addicting. It feels good to be seen, to be liked, and to be praised. But applause can never define the worth of your work. If you let it'll trap you into repeating what's popular instead of releasing what's powerful. You weren't created to echo others. You were born to express what's uniquely yours. And that uniqueness carries value, whether people recognize it today or 10 years from now. Choose to stay anchored. Let your vision guide you through silence, through ridicule, through slow seasons and moments of doubt. Don't abandon your originality just to fit into a space that was never designed for you. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs the courage of those who create from vision, not for validation. When you build from that place, what you birth won't just be different, it will be undeniable. What begins as overlooked, misunderstood, or even mocked can later become the blueprint others follow. This is the quiet, powerful truth of originality. It rarely receives recognition in its infancy, but almost always redefines the norm on its maturity. The journey of the original thinker, creator, or visionary is often paved with silence, skepticism, and solitude. People tend to reject what they cannot categorize, and when your ideas, methods, or expressions don't fit into existing molds, you're often dismissed or overlooked. But the very thing that makes you feel like an outlier is what will one day make you a leader. Originality has a strange way of transforming from something ignored to something imitated once its fruit becomes visible. People are often afraid of what they don't understand and slow to embrace what challenges the familiar. This is why innovators, pioneers, and groundbreakers are often not celebrated in the beginning. They are questioned, doubted, and sometimes even ridiculed, not because their vision lacks value, but because it is ahead of its time. But in time, the consistency of their work, the results of their vision, and the impact of their persistence begin to speak so loudly that silence turns into attention and attention into admiration. Those who once ignored the original voice begin to adjust their own to match its tone. They start dressing like, talking like, and creating like the one they once overlooked. The original becomes the influence, the template, the model. The danger for many visionaries lies in giving up too early, trading their originality for the comfort of imitation just to be accepted faster. But imitation may get you in the room quickly, while originality is what builds the room itself. When you remain true to what you see, even when no one else sees it yet, you are laying a foundation that others will later build upon. The refusal to conform becomes your legacy. Your courage to think differently eventually gives others permission to do the same. And in time, your originality shifts from something questioned to something quoted. It's important to understand that most movements start as moments of isolation. The greatest leaders were once the most misunderstood. Their originality seemed odd until it became obvious. The world resists change until it can no longer deny its results. That's when it turns around and embraces what it once dismissed. This reversal doesn't happen by chance. It happens through the power of unwavering authenticity. When you keep creating, building, and expressing from a place of clarity and conviction, the world eventually adjusts its lens. What it once ignored, it now celebrates. What it once questioned, it now studies. And what it once ridiculed, it now reproduces. This is not about arrogance or superiority. It's about understanding your assignment. Your assignment is not to be understood by everyone. It's to be faithful to what you've been given. You're not here to blend in, but to break molds. You're not here to echo the familiar, but to birth something fresh. The applause may not come immediately, but it will come. And when it does, it won't just be applause, it will be alignment. Others will align their work with what you pioneered. Your originality will become the standard, not because you demanded it, but because you demonstrated it. Hold your ground when you're overlooked. Stay consistent when you're misunderstood. Be faithful when you're the only one clapping. What you carry is not just an idea, it's a seed. And when that seed grows, it becomes a tree others find shade under. One day, those who laughed, ignored, or doubted will adjust their steps to follow the path you paved. That's the power of staying original until your influence becomes undeniable. So to every visionary who has ever been overlooked, doubted, or dismissed, stand firm. The world may not recognize your value immediately, but that does not diminish its worth. What you're building in silence will one day echo in places you've never stepped foot in. Don't water down your uniqueness to fit into someone else's comfort zone. Stay original. Stay anchored to your vision, because the same voices that ignored you will one day echo your words. The same people who copied you will trace your path. And the same originality that was once overlooked would become the influence others admire.
You were never meant to follow trends. You were born to set them. You are not here to be a copy, you are the blueprint. And if you can endure the loneliness of originality, you'll enjoy the legacy of influence. Keep showing up. Keep creating. Keep believing, because your authenticity is your authority and your time is coming.